Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse, episode 1.10, and today is Monday, March 3rd, 2014. My name is Graham Perrow. With me, as always, is Tyler Fitch. Melissa Daphne is hopefully going to join us at some point this evening, but we haven't heard from her yet. And yeah, let's get started. The Q&A app is running on Google+, so if you've got any questions for us, then ask them there, and we shall get to them in due time. First of all, I have to apologize. I've been fighting a cold for a couple of weeks, so my voice is a little deeper than usual. Hopefully, I don't have any coughing fits while we're on the air. But let's start with some roster news. And Tyler, I'm sure you'll have a few things to say about the moves that the Stealth have made. First of all, Kyle Sorensen and Chris O'Doherty are both injured. I think they're both actually have the same problem. They're both out getting surgery and will miss 4 to 6 weeks. The Stealth have also signed Jamie Lincoln and Brad Richardson, and they signed former Rock draftee Brad Cree to the practice roster. I don't think Cree actually ever made it into a Rock game, but he was drafted by the Rock a couple of years ago. And Sean Lundstrom was released. Tyler, what do you know?
That the Stealth are going to be hurting without Sorensen for another 4 to 6 weeks. As the only games they've won this year, he's been in the lineup, and that there's a connection there. I think I stated it last week, and I still stick by it strongly. So they're in a very tight spot now to get through the middle third of the season. And Chris O'Doherty also has been rock solid, very reliable defender. Maybe missed 1 or 2 games in the last 4 seasons I think he's played. So it's unexpected to see him go down as well, and to lose both of them at the same time, you lose 2 solid defenders. Very unfortunate to have that happen to the Stealth. They're going to be hurting because of that. Signing Jamie Lincoln comes in as a lefty shooter, so it's not really a true replacement for Sorensen or O'Doherty, but he's shown that he can play. He's played for the Langley Thunder in the past, so he knows the arena, and he's played in the NLL, so he's pretty much ready to go. Brad Richardson, previously with the Mammoth, I liked him. He's been in big situations, and he's also in the summer played with New Westminster Salmon Bellies when they were making Man Cup runs, so he's seen experience in situations where with good teams. I like him. He's in the kind of in the mold of Justin Salt in my mind, as far as that's the player I think of when I see Richardson. And so I look forward to seeing what he can do to help the Stealth right now in their time of need. Bradley Cree, I've seen nothing. Maybe you've seen him at training camp in the last year or two. Graham, I'm not sure. And Sean Lundstrom, he's just not quite ready yet. He's still a kid that's just coming out of juniors. He had 1 great training camp experience. He had 6 or 7 goals during a scrimmage, but as I understand it, it was an inter-squad scrimmage, so scoring 6 or 7 goals against half of the Stealth defense that has only won 3 games is not a great barometer to your success during the regular season. He got in the 1 game in Philly, didn't produce at all, and moved down the practice roster, and I think they're just going to kind of cut that line and maybe come back to it in a year or two. They kind of have that option being the only team in BC. They can watch over guys and make these moves. So yeah, that's my thoughts on all the moves for the last week.
So lots of stuff happening in Vancouver. One thing that's not happening in Colorado is Ethan Iannucci getting into any games. He was signed by the Mammoth in January. He played in 3 games, didn't have a huge impact, and I don't remember hearing anything about him being injured or having any kind of other issues. But as far as I know, he's been a healthy scratch for the last 4 games. starting to wonder if we've seen the last of Nooch in the NLL. I mean, he's obviously a talented player, but the Wings, I don't know if the Wings gave up on him or they just decided they could get Brody Merrill for him. But the Stealth gave up on him, and it now looks like the Mammoth have as well.
Right. He came in when the Mammoth were in need of a righty shooter, and then since that time, Casey Powell has come back to the team, and we haven't seen Nooch since, and you wouldn't. Even though Powell's older, he's playing at a much higher level of production. So I think it's interesting that they haven't released him, and because you're not going to play him over Westerveld or Powell, or even with the production you're getting over Sean Pollock. So if I were the Mammoth, I would look to cut him and fill a spot of need, maybe a defensive runner, or just some spot that you have more frequent turnover and use, and they haven't. I don't know if Nooch has some deal in his contract. They had to keep him for X weeks, which they be a ridiculous thing, but he's got some way he's sticking around when he's not playing. I don't know why.
Yeah, something weird seems to be going on there. Another I want to say minor move. It's not really that minor. In Philadelphia, Kevin Ross is back, and he's been reactivated, and Roger Weiss has been released. And presumably Weiss will go back to CLAX, where a lot of the NLL players who have been released are playing. Gavin Prout's playing there. There's all kinds of players playing in CLAX, and I've asked about it a couple of times in the past. Wonder why the NLL and CLAX don't get together and create some sort of minor league, for lack of a better term. If they can get rather than just releasing a player outright for the NLL, they could send him down to CLAX, make sure that he's getting some time in. Even the coaches can talk to one another, the GMs can talk to one another, and see what kind of progress they're making, what kind of skills they have, and that sort of thing. If it was a two-way relationship between the NLL and CLAX, I think that would be a great thing for both leagues. But for some reason, they haven't done that. Maybe CLAX has no interest in that. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think they have any sort of travel budget, so you would need like a CLAX West. You could probably put together two teams in the BC area, just then you have the exciting experience of playing each other every other weekend or every weekend just to get runs in. But I don't think they could really get three teams and still have this with the Stealth cherry picking the talent otherwise. So I see the Ontario guys in CLAX. They're probably just all just drive to the game, no team buses, no big expenses at all. So they could benefit from an NL partnership maybe, where they all kind of get a little bit, like if you have our player on your team, we'll cover his expenses kind of thing. That'd be pretty cool, and it'd help grow CLAX. But for all the players in BC locked out of it because they can't afford to travel to Ontario to play, or maybe if they're young, they would move out there for the purpose of playing, which is a pretty big commitment. It'd be very cool potential there, but I don't see it happening.
It's a good point about the Western players. I think CLAX actually talked at one point about having some Western teams, but I guess they just never got there. Maybe they couldn't find ownership out west or something. We do have a question, or at least a comment from Boxla News. CLAX management and ownership group is the reason why they do not work together. Okay.
That's a little unfortunate, but that's the way it goes. There's a lot of history with these guys. All the guys running the leagues have been playing together and against each other for their whole lives almost. So you could see there could just be some part of the history where they're not willing to work together, even if there's a chance that it could be beneficial, which is a bummer.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. We had 3 games last week. Two of them involve the Toronto Rock. And let's start with the game on Friday. Toronto against Edmonton. And all three of us picked Edmonton to win this, and all three of us were correct. I thought the Rock played pretty well in this game. As Jamie Dawick tweeted, I'm pretty sure after the game, they just got beat by a better team. They actually got some more decent looks at Aaron Bold than I thought they would get. I kind of got the impression it was going to be one of these, if you can see the goalie at all, shoot. Otherwise, you won't get any shots at all. And they did get a number of shots off, but a good portion of them either hit the post or just hit Bold straight in the chest. Obviously, they got a few by him, but yeah, the Edmonton defense was pretty solid. Toronto's defense wasn't bad either. I didn't think Mark Matthews had that great a game. He was missing the net a fair number of times. Riley Lowen's looking pretty good. I like the way he looked on the floor. And Jeremy Thompson was on fire. He scored a goal. He won 70-something% of the faceoffs. He led the game in loose balls. He was just everywhere. I tweeted during that game that anytime the Rock ownership decides that they want to go out and trade for Jeremy Thompson, I would be totally fine with that. So I can't imagine what Edmonton would want for him. That would be a kind of a scary trade. But anyway, yeah, so pretty decent game. Edmonton obviously has the defense to go up against anybody, and they just shut the Rock down. And considering the Rock scored 13 goals the next night and didn't play well, the fact that Edmonton kept them to only 10 the night before was pretty good. Did you see this game at all?
Yeah, I watched most of it, and I was impressed that Toronto kept it close. Always basically had a chance. Edmonton could never get a run and put it away. The one stat that sticks out in my mind was the forced turnovers. The Rock had 5, and the Rush had 16. They completely dominated them physically, yet they only won by 1 goal. That's the thing that surprised me the most looking at the things. But the one play that sticks in my mind is Rush player goes behind cage, Rock player goes behind cage, 2 Rush players collapse on him. He just throws the ball towards where a righty shooter would be. John Lintz is standing there, picks off the pass, so didn't even have to try. And he's just going off the other way. I was like, I think Lintz probably gets the forced turnover by the stats, but he didn't cause the forced turnover. He received the forced turnover. So I was like, the 2 guys that worked over in the corner, that was an interesting situation. It was so blatant that they just, boom, and the guy just throw it over towards one of my guys. It's like, they should get some credit for that. And like NFL, you can get half a sack. Those guys had at least half a turnover there. Very fun game to watch. I mean, 1 goal, then Rock never quit. Colin Doyle never quits, never lets the team quit, and kind of kept him in it. It was I liked watching it.
And then we had the next night, and yeah, this was kind of a nasty game to watch. Other than the first quarter, though, Toronto actually won the game. Not because they played better than Calgary did, but they actually outscored Calgary in the final 3 quarters. Now, obviously, when you're playing with a 7-0 lead after 1 quarter, the way you play is a little different. So the fact that Toronto outscored them over the last 3 doesn't really mean an awful lot. And it certainly doesn't mean Toronto played better than Calgary in the last 3 quarters, because I don't think they did. They did make a game of it, though. They could certainly have just said, okay, well, we're down 7-0 after 10 minutes or 15 minutes. This game's over. Let's just beat the snot out of Calgary as many times as we can. And they've certainly done that in the past. Toronto and Calgary always seem to have really chippy games. They didn't do that this time. Maybe it was, as you said, Colin Doyle just said, look, we're down by a bunch, but this is lacrosse. We can score a bunch. There's still 45 minutes left in this game. Let's do it. And they clawed back. They were down by 9 at one point. They clawed back to get back within 4. twice in the fourth quarter. They were back within 4. But Calgary's offense was just too strong, and as close as Toronto could make it, they just couldn't get over that hump. One thing that I thought was a little odd was that Dane Dobbie had 4 goals in the first half. Dixon had 5 in the first half, and in the second half, the two of them combined only had 1 goal and 1 assist. So it seemed odd that both of them were so dominant in the first half and not dominant at all in the second half. I find it hard to believe that the two of them just said, "Hey, we've got this game. Let's just kind of take it easy now," and that doesn't seem like the kind of thing that happens an awful lot in this league. The comment that went around Twitter at one point was that Kurt Malowski doesn't have an off switch. So unless they're winning by 30, he's going to keep going out there. He's going to throw the challenge flag when you're up by 7. These kind of things, and it's not a question of let's run up the score and being unsportsmanlike. It's just a question of this is what we got to do to win this game, and we've seen the big comebacks, and we don't want to be the victim of it. So if it means we're going to throw the challenge flag when we're up by 8, then that's what we're going to do. So I don't really blame him for that. Did you see this?
I was running it. Yeah, I ran it simultaneous with the Colorado game, so it's kind of the old saying that you do 2 things at once, you're really doing 2 things poorly. And so I just had tablet, phone, and enjoyed the experience. I was amazed that they were able to come back into this game considering it was 7-0. It was so far one-sided that I thought it would be on the realm of the old 09 stealth game where it ended up 14-15-0 at one point in the third. But the Rock showed a lot of heart to get back in this game, and I do think that their defense stepped it up in the second half and slowed down Dixon and Dobbie, but not that much. Malowski doesn't have an off switch, but I feel that those guys maybe had a cruise control. They didn't turn it off, but they just wanted to get through, not get injured, not get any sort of situation that would end up bad for them, penalties or whatnot. That was my experience.
Okay, and the third game was Rochester taking out Colorado in Colorado. Obviously, Melissa was at this game, but she is not with us tonight. She did leave a few messages here. I'll read what she wrote in our little show notes here. The game was nowhere near close, despite what the score says. I think Melissa was not too impressed with this game. Mammoth played flat. No one could seem to catch John Grant's frequent behind-the-back no-look passes, and they couldn't get any momentum going. All the challenges went against the Mammoth. First was a bad call from the ref, who called a goal on the floor, but the video was not conclusive, so it should not have been overturned. Mammoth had a good third quarter, mainly because Rochester played sloppy, dropping passes and acting like the game was in hand, and we all know that's a dangerous thing to do in this league. In the fourth quarter, the Mammoth played like they had the rest of the game, acted like they had the whole game to go. Last 5 minutes, the game was still in reach, but the Mammoth had no sense of urgency. Players were slow getting off the floor, they were flat, took most of the shot clock each play just to set up for a shot. She said, "This team is so flat and lacking in leadership." So that's what Melissa thought of this game, and it doesn't sound like she was too pleased with it. I didn't see any of this one because I was watching the Rock game. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I was watching this, but I started paying more attention to Calgary. I mean, this game was 9-1 at the half, I think. It also had the appearance of, or maybe 9-2 at the half, but it was 9-1 at one point, and it was every indication that these guys were playing worse than Toronto was in Calgary at the same time, because at least Toronto started coming back in the second quarter. I compared this to the game 2 weeks ago where Stealth, basically we had the same Valentine's Day massacre in Colorado, and then they were setting up the same exact thing, but they came back and made a good second half to make it interesting. Paul Dawson, I believe, had his first goal since '09, which is a long break between goals for even a defender, I feel. And he had 2 goals and the team won by 2, so it's important to have him on the floor sometimes. Not too bad for our former goalie.
Yeah, I always forget that he was drafted as a goaltender. I don't know if he actually played any minutes as a goaltender, but I think he was drafted by the Stealth. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he was drafted by the Stealth, and they announced him as a goaltender when they drafted him, but it was my understanding that the summer before he had started his conversion to being defender in Brampton. And so the Stealth continued that, and I don't think he even suited up. The Stealth had Cosmo, it was '07. They had Cosmo, Vince, and Miller and Blaisdell were already gone, but they had enough goalies in front of them that they did not need him to play goalie. So they moved him. They continued to move, whatever the situation was. It's worked out all right for him. He's making quite a career for himself.
That he is. He's one of the better defenders on a pretty good defensive team. Okay, so that's it for the games of the week. Another week with only 3. A couple of other topics we wanted to discuss. We were going to talk about the second assist and what the scoring race would have looked like if the second assist were not counted, just as something interesting. But that's a topic that Melissa specifically wanted to talk about. And since she's not around tonight, maybe we'll leave that for next week. And so we'll skip that for now. And we'll move on to our other interesting topic of the evening, and that is our favorite failed team in the NLL. And like I said last week, this is being the NLL, we've got lots to choose from. So I'll read Melissa's first, since she had her notes listed for us. Her choice was the Arizona Sting. It was a good team, obviously. They made the championship finals twice, I think. Did they make it once or twice? At least once, for sure, because I remember the Rock beat them.
I want to say twice. They were definitely in '07, and I believe in '04 or '05.
It was '05 against the Rock.
Then in '07, they hosted Rochester in the circus game. So they made it 2 times.
Ah, that's right. So, yeah, the team only existed for 3 or 4 seasons. Made 2 finals. That's not bad at all. Close enough for a road trip. Well, obviously for Melissa, not so much for me.
I drove there.
She said the fans overall weren't that great. Met a few nice ones, but most were pretty jerky to us. So I guess she didn't have too great experience with the fans, but good team nonetheless. Excuse me. My choice would have been the Portland Lumberjacks. They had a great owner who was really involved in the team and paying attention and watching what was going on to the point where she married one of her players. And I'm pretty sure that's probably the only pro sports team where you can say that. Their jerseys were cool. I kind of like those, the plaid jerseys that the Lumberjacks wore. They made 3 playoff appearances and 1 championship game in 4 years. Not quite Arizona Sting, but pretty close. Their attendance was up in the 7,000-8,000 range over the 4 years. They had a few games over 10,000, so their attendance was pretty good. So so props to the Lumberjacks. My honorable mentions would have been the Arizona Sting, as Melissa said, and the Boston Blazers as well. I kind of wish the Blazers could have stuck around a little longer. Tyler, how about you?
I don't know if I put enough thought in this, but I also went with the Lumberjacks. I loved having them out here. The 2 years, the final 2 years there around '08 and '09, I actually had season tickets in Portland, along with my season tickets in San Jose. After the '07 season, I had moved to Oregon. So we would drive into Portland, watch a game with all my friends, and then I would fly to San Jose and watch a game the next day. It was my typical weekend during the NL season. It was nice to be young without kids and have disposable income. The players, they had some great individual players. Tyler Codron's my favorite. He was kind of the most accessible. They would all go hang out in the bar at the arena after the game, but they would all just huddle around, and there's kind of like nobody would go talk to them or anything like that. But Codron you could go up to, and he would talk to you about the game, and then he'd see us in San Jose, and he'd kind of give us a little head nod, and he was always fun to see. They had some great players come through. Dan Dawson on loan from the Arizona Sting for 1 year, and he took the Lumberjacks to the finals. He's very valuable. Never had a great goalie ever. Bold played there, but he wasn't actually. He was on the roster, but I don't think he actually played. There's usually Matt Disher, Matt King for 1 year, but it was great to go watch because for me, the fan experience, I was sitting right next to the guys I played with in college, so we just had a ton of fun. Great crowds, always over 7,000. It definitely wasn't their issue. It was just expensive to rent out the NBA arena, and they got no help at all. Yeah, that's it. Lumberjacks, definitely my favorite former team.
All right. Let's move on to our predictions for the week. Last week, I guess we all had pretty good weeks. You and I both went 3-0, and Melissa went 2-1. So overall, you are in first now, Tyler, at 30-12. I'm at second, 1 game behind you at 29-13, and Melissa is hot on our heels at 24-18. So not bad for all three of us, actually. Predictions for next week. This has been interesting because all 4 of us have chosen exactly the same teams for all 4 games. So I don't know how much analysis we want to put into this because it's all going to be the same analysis, likely. For Minnesota and Buffalo, I went with Buffalo. They haven't played in a couple of weeks, so I imagine they've gotten a lot of practice and stuff in their time off. But I do remember seeing some tweets that people weren't too happy about having a couple of weeks off. And I guess probably every team's going to have that at some point this season. But I still think they're the best team in the East at this point, possibly with the exception of Rochester. But they're right up there. Their confidence is high. On the other hand, Minnesota's confidence is probably not very high. So I had to go with Buffalo there. Philadelphia and Rochester. Philadelphia has kind of been hot and cold this year. They played well earlier in the year, but I think they're on about a 4-game losing streak now. Rochester is Rochester, the reigning champs, one of the best goalies in the league, best defense, blah blah blah. We've been through it a million times. So I had to go with the Nighthawks there. Calgary and Colorado. Given the beating that the Roughnecks put on the Rock last weekend, it's kind of hard for me to pick anybody to beat Calgary this week. So I had to go with Calgary there. And Vancouver, Edmonton. Vancouver minus Sorensen. Edmonton still undefeated. It's kind of a no-brainer. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I agree. The Stealth and Buffalo both coming off not just a bye week, but 2 bye weeks. So they haven't played in 3 weeks for a game. I know the Stealth had practice last week, and I saw some mention of that. But that's a long layoff to have 2 weeks off in a row instead of like a bye week in February, a bye week maybe in March. I haven't really seen that a lot for having 2 straight weeks off. The Calgary at Colorado game, they play each other tight usually, and Colorado can beat Calgary, but lately in the last couple of years I feel like it's always been in Calgary they can beat them. So if they're in Colorado, I just went the other way and picked Calgary. They've been hot and they seem to take care of the business when they're in Colorado. And Philadelphia players are frustrated with the situation. They're not going to quit ever, but you got to go to Rochester. Like you said, you got Matt Vince. They're the champs. That game's done. And Buffalo, Minnesota, I think they won their last game. So no, maybe not. I can't remember when they were at Philadelphia versus some home game losses. But yeah, they've only got a couple wins, and Buffalo's playing great right now. 2 weeks off, we'll see how that affects them. Same as the Stealth. But basically, all favorites this week is how I see it. Kind of clear favorites. We all picked the same 4 teams to win.
Yeah, I suppose that means Melissa will not be making any progress on us, even if we all go
Yeah,
4-0.
We're boxing her out.
Not on purpose, Melissa, of course, but whatever works, I suppose. Okay, I suppose that's it for this week. It's unfortunate that Melissa couldn't join us, and hopefully she'll be back with us next week. Our website is addictedtolacrosse.com, and all of our shows will be available there. And you can also find us on Twitter. We're at Lax Podcast. Each of us is also on Twitter, and mine and Tyler's handles are on screen. Melissa's is Snow Kitten. And you can also reach us at feedback@addictedtolacrosse.com. So feel free to send us any feedback, any questions, or comments that you have about the show. And that will do it for this week, and we will see you next Monday. Good night.